Good morning, everybody. Hope you had a good night in the city of Quebec last night. Found some good places to eat and drink. This session is 1 hour long. It's slightly shorter than the others in the programme, so we're going to finish at 11 o'clock for the coffee break. So we'll keep things moving along. I'm Paul Thompson. I'm the Commercial Director for Sail Training International, and this session is all about trainee placement by host ports. And I'm guessing that most of you in the room are from host ports. I can see a few people from other organisations, but this is quite a specific session about trainee placement. The running order for this morning is that I'll give a brief presentation just to set the scene and set the context. We have Rega from Aalborg, who is the project coordinator for Tall Ships Races 2015. And looking forward to 2019, and Rega did a fantastic job of placing 150 trainees across 20 ships last year during the Tall Ships Races. So we're going to get a case study from Rega and hear how it can be done, because they did a fantastic job. We're going to hear briefly from Jonathan Cheshire, who's one of the STI trustees, because we have some new guidelines now for our bursary scheme programme, where vessels are approved when they meet certain criteria, and these criteria may be something that host ports want to consider when looking at which vessels to place their trainees on. And then finally we'll hear from Miriam Postuma, who is a co-owner of the Golden Louvre, which is a fantastic Class A ship that many of you will know, and she is a regular recipient of host port trainees, so we'll be able to give a vessel operator's perspective on what works and perhaps what doesn't always work. So I think we've got a good programme, we've got a good mixture of speakers, so without further ado, I will press on. So, some of you will have seen this slide yesterday, but just a reminder of why do we as STI organise tall ships events? Why do we organise the races? For a number of reasons. First and foremost, trainee experiences during the event. We want to give young people a life-changing experience during the tall ships races. It's a fantastic showcase for the activity of sail training. The races provide a great marketing platform to promote the cause of sail training. And it gives all the vessel operators a platform for them to promote themselves and to attract trainees during the event, but also to promote themselves more widely. And of course, we're looking for a legacy effect in countries where the races visit. We would like those cities and countries to continue to work with sail training and to continue to send young people to sea. But this session is very much about trainee experiences during the event, and we, certainly at STI, we think of it as a number of steps. You as host ports have to find young people that want to go. There's the funding issue, the small matter of the money, which is of course important, and that's a big subject which we won't talk about today. What we will talk about today is when you've found them and you've funded them, how do you place them? Where do you put them? Which ship do you put them on? So what are the considerations when you're looking to place your host port trainees? What are the sort of things that you have to bear in mind? Well, of course, you as the host port will have a number of things that you have to think about, and we'll look at those. You also have to think about the trainees themselves and their wants and their needs and their character. And of course, you should be thinking about the fleet and the impact of your decisions on the fleet, and we'll look at that as well. So first and foremost, happy trainees. I mean, as a host port, what you want is for those young people to have a fantastic experience. It needs to be safe, it needs to be challenging, it needs to be fun. You want them to find friendship, you want them to mix with people from different nationalities. And of course, as a host port, you want it to be a smooth process. You don't want too many headaches along the way with the administration of the placement process. So these are the sorts of things that perhaps are going through your mind as a host port. What about the trainee considerations? Well, you need to think about their age. It's very different sending a 16-year-old trainee compared to sending a 21-year-old or an 18 or a 19-year-old. There's the whole juvenile versus adult consideration. Some of them may have been sailing before. Some of them may have been on a tall ship before. they'll have an insight, an understanding and an experience which may mean that you place them in a different way. And again, at STI, we often talk about two different types of trainee. We talk about the want to go trainees and the need to go trainees. I'll just explain that briefly. The want to goes are the ones who proactively apply when you have your campaign promoting the opportunity through Facebook and through the media. You launch your Hostport trainee program and you say you can apply. You'll get smart young people applying off their own back. They know what they're doing and they'll apply. But you should hopefully also have in your plan the want to take some people from more difficult backgrounds that don't know they want to go. They may be coming from your social services department. We heard yesterday from Christian Sand, who did some fantastic work with these need to go trainees from difficult backgrounds. So the way that you handle the need to goes who are having an assisted placement may be different to the way that you handle the want to goes who are very proactive in managing the administration themselves. And so you need to have that in mind. They may have some requests of their own. They may want to go with somebody. They may have a travel companion. They may have a particular preference for a type of vessel. They may even have a specific vessel they want to go on because they've seen a picture or their friend went last year or something like that. So it's good to create a very simplistic trainee profile for each person. Come up with a rough set of criteria for each trainee. Are they a junior, an adult? Have they been before? Do they want to go on a particular vessel? Have they come from a difficult background where they're going to need more support during the process? So you create a profile for that young person. So which vessel? Well, there's all different types of vessel, aren't there? There's big ones and small ones. They're from different countries. Different languages are spoken on board. They all run different types of sail training program. Some of them are very inclusive. Some ships tend to treat trainees perhaps as not pure passengers, but the permanent crew do more. On some ships, the trainees will do more. So it's good to know from the ships what type of sail training program they run. What can the trainee expect as an experience? What is the offer from the ship in terms of the trainee experience? And the trainees may not understand any of that. So although they may have, they may see a picture of a Class A ship and say, well, I want to go on that one. They need to perhaps be, it needs to be explained to them about the different types of experience, different types of ship. And how do you do that? Well, you've got images, video, you might have stories from trainees from a previous event. You may have case studies, but it's good to give the trainees some insight into the different types of experience they can expect on different types of vessel. It's very different sailing on Dormageorgie in a 4.6-7 with a 2-metre swell than sailing on a Kayla in a 4.6-7 with a 2-metre swell. The experience for the trainee is different. On the smaller boats, it can be more challenging. I'm a skipper of a Class D vessel myself. It can be challenging. The crew tend to get involved in all aspects of sailing the boat. On the bigger ships, they may be involved in some of the aspects, but not all aspects, because it's not possible for them to be involved in everything. So it's a big consideration in the type of vessel that you place them on, and their understanding of what to expect on that vessel. So other host port considerations. First and foremost is safety and welfare. What you don't want to be doing is taking young people from your city and putting them into any situation which is not deemed to be safe, or whether the welfare environment is not what it should be. Cost is a factor. As a host port, you have a budget for your trainee program. And if one ship is charging X and another ship is charging twice X, it has a big impact on your thinking, because you've got to make the money go round. You've got to stretch it. I know from Rega's perspective and other host port coordinators that the whole administration of what can often be well over 100, 200, 300 young people is a nightmare. We were talking yesterday about trying to collect 182 passport numbers from young people. It's difficult. So the ease of administration of the process is important. Another consideration is if you have a national sail training organisation in your country and you have vessels that are based in your country that are participating in the race, you may want to work closely with them. It's a natural thing to do because you're supporting them as your local organisations. So in the same way that you've created the trainee profiles, you can create vessel profiles with some basic criteria. You know, the type of vessel, the type of sail training program they run, the welfare and safeguarding policy they have in place, all sorts of things. So then you've got some good information that you can use to make an informed placement of those young people. The young people may have a preferred vessel, they may have a choice. It may not be the best thing for them. And that's something that is important. You know, if you really feel that it's not right for them to go on a particular ship, you should explain to them why you think that's the case. You know, you've got a 16-year-old who's never been to sea before, and they want to go on a 55-foot Class D vessel. It may not be right for them, where there's no mentor on board, and it's pretty full on. You know, so you have to be able to give that advice. This process isn't a perfect science, but if you at least have some sort of a framework for the placement process, it's better than having no real framework. From our perspective as STI, we would always say, please, please spread the love across the fleet. You know, if you've got 150 young people, don't put them in 3 big groups of 50 on 3 Class A ships. That's actually not good for the fleet, because it's good to spread the revenue around, but it's actually not good for the trainees either to go with too many people from their own city. It's better for them to meet other nationalities, other cultures. Go in groups, by all means go in groups, but don't go in huge groups on a limited number of ships. It's not good for the fleet, and actually the trainees will have a better experience if they mix with more people. Last year, 90% of all host port trainees went on Class A vessels. 90%. And Aalborg was one of the few ports that actually placed trainees on smaller vessels. It is easier for host ports to place in big lumps of trainees on a few vessels. Less administration, so I do understand that. But I think Aalborg proved that you can spread that around between different types of ships, which, you know, it has an impact on ship recruitment as well. You know, if you can spread the love around, you're going to have more chance of attracting vessels to your city. So there's some of the considerations. That was really just a scene setter before we hear from Rega on how she did the work in Aalborg. But in summary, it's a lot of work, as you all know. It's not easy. We really appreciate the effort you make to find and fund and place these young people. This is what the Tall Ships races are all about. It's about young people. You need someone to own the process in your team, and don't underestimate the amount of time they'll need to do this. You can use external resources. You know, Janine's in the room at the back from Windseeker. Windseeker is an agency that will help you with that process. It's not for everyone, but for some ports that works. So you have that option, you have that choice. And obviously we're here to try and help as best we can. Okay, so that was the scene setter. Thank you very much from all of the young trainees that you have placed or you will place in the future. This is what it's all about. That smile on that young person's face. That is what you are delivering. So thank you. Okay, Rega.
Thank you, Paul. Hello, everyone. Good morning. As Paul said, during the next 20 minutes, I'll try and give you some insight about how we've decided to handle the placement of trainees in Aalborg. But before we do so, I'd like to take the opportunity to show you a little video that I didn't get to show yesterday. So. taste of what the youngsters got to experience while they were in Aalborg. And I think I'll start out by showing you a photo of the 155 trainees that we sent off from Aalborg on Monday the 27th of July. This is from the day of the departure. We have a tradition of always doing a group photo of them all together. Well, in our application for the tall ship races in 15, we committed ourselves to placing 150 trainees. We've always, in Aalborg, had a principle of self-payment, that in order to commit the youngsters and make sure that they end up going, that they pay 200 euros themselves, and then we as an organisation cover the costs of the difference up to the price that the vessel quotes. And actually we find that that is a very good solution, because even though some will drop out before the event, we have maintained more or less all the youngsters that have signed up at the beginning. In Aalborg, we organise the recruitment and placement of trainees in our own event team, where more or less 2 experienced workers start about a year before, planning the campaign and how we want to do, what the process is going to be like in the next year. And here I'd like to stress that it is very important, as Paul said, to dedicate some resources to the task, because it does take a lot of time and it is a lot of work and information that has to be going back and forth. We also find it good to place it in our event team, because there is a good knowledge of the fleet. As Paul said, it's important to know which vessels you place your trainees on board. And also they have the knowledge of the event and what the youngsters will be experiencing. We also find that a good relationship with vessel operators, for instance, Miriam and I know each other very well, and that is an advantage when you talk and negotiate with the vessels. And a good relationship with the host ports. Kristiansand and Aalborg have always had a good relationship, and we help each other with some of the practical tasks relating to having the trainees going from Kristiansand to Aalborg. We started out in September 2014 with a campaign. We used Facebook and our website a lot, but we also used printed ads in magazines and papers, banners and flyers that were put up around the city and educational institutions. We did radio spots and of course press releases telling the story and the sail training message. We, as the youngsters are in between 16 and 26, we focused on many of our educational institutions in the city. And our cultural institutions, our major cultural institutions, we made very, very large banners that were hung up so the youngsters could see them when they went to do their sports. And our local sailing clubs were also very helpful in getting the message across. Our sponsors offered to do some promotion on their Facebook sites and their intranet for their employees and their employees' children. So many of our sponsors actually sent off some of their young children to give them an experience of a lifetime. And our city cafes got flyers, banners, posters, small postcards. And also we got in contact with some different organisations that focus on young people with different sorts of disabilities. Just to show you what our campaign looked like, this is one of the flyers and the posters that were distributed and hung up around the city. I won't translate everything, but it basically just tells the youngsters where they can get the information. And then, of course, if they are interested, asking them the question, are you interested in having an experience of a lifetime and seeing what life is on board a sailing vessel? These are the banners that were hung up. And we used our info screens as well in our local buses, because many of the youngsters use the bus to go to school. So how were they selected? Actually, we were quite surprised. In a matter of months, 150 had already signed up. We had a registration form available on our website, and they could send it to us by email or give us a phone call. Because we had 150, we had to do a waiting list, because we had more than 150, and we found that to be very useful because a few did drop out up until the event. So we always had some standing by ready to take the spot. We had a deadline of the 15th of May for the youngsters to pay the 200 euros. And after that, the work itself really started in placing them on the different vessels. We ended up sending 155 trainees from Aalborg, Kristiansand to Aalborg, and 10 of those trainees were actually a sponsor. It was included in their sponsorship that they could select 10 young people that could go. We had 8 trainees with a disability, and what we found that it wasn't just children, the youngsters from Aalborg that applied, they were actually from the entire country. A new thing we did in 2015 was trainee sponsorships. We were in contact with a lot of companies, educational institutions that found that a major sponsorship was not for them, but offering them the opportunity to sponsor a trainee and a youngster was very appealing to them. So that was a great success, and we'll work more on that the next time around. When a vessel registered, the first thing I did was to contact them, asking them for information about corporate hospitality and trainees, or are you interested in having trainees placed or corporate hospitality? So that was the first part of the process. Some vessels preferred to do it directly with us, while others preferred to use an agency like Windseeker, and that's not a problem for us. We sort of follow the wishes of the vessels, but we had a good cooperation with Windseeker regarding some of the youngsters that were going on, I think about 4 or 5 different Dutch vessels. On the basis of the feedback we got from the vessels, prices and how many would they like to have, we formed a database which we used to match with the trainee afterwards. We had from the trainees gotten different requests. Some wanted to go on a smaller one, a D vessel, and other had specific requests regarding a Class A vessel they'd known. Some trainees had gone before. The ones that weren't on the smaller ones actually requested to go on a smaller vessel because the time before they'd been on a Class A vessel. So, and as Paul said, some of them had a companion that liked to travel with. Well, as Paul said, we managed to place them on 20 different vessels, and it wasn't something that we found all that difficult. And we'd never considered just placing on a few vessels. It was always natural for us to place trainees on the vessels where they requested trainees. So in total, our calculations show an income of 96,000 euros for the vessels, and I think that's pretty good. I'll just get into some of the more specific tasks that were involved. We functioned as an intermediate between the vessel and the trainee. And as Paul said, that was a lot of work, because with 155 young people, it's a lot of information that we have to retrieve from them. Sorry. And a lot of the work is also a bit complicated because some of the procedures vary very much from each vessel. Some vessels have an office and are very reachable, while others, it's a captain who's at sea. So sometimes it takes a while before they get back to you. Also invoicing, foreign payments, that takes a lot of resources because there are a lot of invoices. and cancellations. Whenever a trainee would drop out or a vessel would drop out, we had to replace the trainee, so sort of to start over again. We had to do individual information for each trainee because we felt that it was important that the trainee got some information that was specific from the vessel they were going to be placed on. So we got in contact with the vessel asking for the trainee program, and it was sent directly to the trainee. But then again, using the resources and the time is very well spent, because our feeling is that both the trainee and the vessel were quite satisfied and happy with the way things were handled. Just some more specific tasks. Sending off 155 youngsters require a couple of buses and some logistics. We drove them to Hirtshals, where they went to Kristiansand by a ferry. And we had to find companions. We found 3 that would like to join them, so that we were sure that they all got off the ferry. And of course, they have to have transport as well, the escorts. They have to go back home again and hotel accommodation while they're there. We provided all the trainees with a t-shirt and a windbreaker. Just getting all the right sizes takes some time. And then general information. We had to put together a package of general information for each one of them. How did we prepare the trainees? We had 2 briefings prior to the event where they were invited to participate with their parents. We invited Asbjørn, who's a member of Youth Forum, DSCA, and part of the crew of our local-based Class B vessel, Jens Krog, and a former trainee, and that was really, really good. They were able to give the trainees loads of information, both practical, but also a bit about the culture and the experience they were going to have, prepare them for what they were going to be experiencing. They were also offered a day stay with Jens Krog in order to try it beforehand if it was the first time for them. And then we did a Facebook group for them, where they were able to interact with each other in relationship beforehand. Just a picture from the day where they left Aalborg. When they arrived in Kristiansand, members of Jens Krog's crew were there to meet them and made sure that they got on board the vessels. So that was what I had to say. Well, as you've heard, Aalborg will be hosting the tall ship races again in 2019, and we're looking forward to it, and we hope that we'll have just a good experience, and our trainees will have just a good experience as they had in 2015.
Thank you very much, Rega. Fantastic, and lots of good information in there. The presentations, this is being filmed for this session, so the presentation and the filming will be on the website. Okay, now I'm going to hand over to Jonathan Cheshire, one of the STI trustees, with some new guidance information.
Thank you, Paul. I was just saying, if I'd realised it's going to be filmed, I'd have put a slightly smarter shirt on. But, okay, the reason I'm doing this little bit is that I'm in charge of the bursary scheme that we use across the whole of the fleet for the races. That's principally the Oman bursaries, but there are also 1 or 2 other schemes. And last year, I've only been in charge of the bursaries really for about 1.5 years, and as I've got to know how it works, I've been thinking about refining the system slightly. Last year, there were 1 or 2 occasions out of the 104 trainees that we placed using the Oman bursaries. I think there were 2 where, for various reasons, we had to move a trainee off the ship on which they'd originally been booked. And those were both to do with problems with either ship certification or In one case, insurance. We found that the ship didn't have adequate insurance, in our view, to sail in the sailing area, sea area that they were intending to operate. The other case was of a ship that changed its flag state at the beginning of the season, and inevitably it didn't happen quite as quickly as they had expected, and so at the last minute we had to shift trainees because they didn't actually have a valid ship certificate in either of the two states they were sort of transitioning between. So, not massive issues, but it just started us thinking about our responsibility, whether that's a legal responsibility, which we think it probably isn't, but there is certainly a moral responsibility if we are paying to place trainees on a particular vessel. We feel it's incumbent on us to just make sure that the vessel is suitable. And I think the other point is that bursary schemes are aimed at disadvantaged young people. So young people who are either financially disadvantaged or from a socially disadvantaged background, who may therefore need a little bit more support and possibly slightly more sensitive management when they're on the ship than your average prosperous middle class kid who's just going for an adventure. Anyway, as a result of all of that, we have come up with a system which we are trialling for the very first time this year, and it's very much a trial, so we're assuming it will change as we get feedback from the different vessels, of having a set of criteria, asking ships to sign a declaration saying that they meet certain criteria, and we will use that to create a register of approved vessels on which we're prepared to place bursary recipients. So, just to run through the guidelines, if we could have... Oh, I've got it, have I? Jolly good. Green button. Bang. Oh, that one. Oh, there we are. Okay, so there are, I think, I can't remember exactly how many, I think there are 13 altogether we've set out. No, 11. Now, the majority of these, the vessel will have to comply with anyway if they enter the race. So number 1 through 5 is basic, is a requirement simply to enter the race. We're just repeating it here for 2 reasons. One, just to emphasise that is the case, and also one of the other revisions we're making to the bursary scheme is that if we find that we haven't spent all of the money for 1 year by the time the race is too late to put trainees on the races, we will spend any balance on sail training experiences outside the races, because we want to make sure that that money gets properly spent in each year. So items 1 to 5 are requirements for entering the race anyway, so you shouldn't have any ships that don't meet those. The remainder are, and yes, 7 is also a requirement. Then 8 may very well be a requirement before too long. It's already a requirement for the larger vessels, and we're looking for a kind of simplified version of SMSs for smaller vessels. Now, the next ones are really number 9. Certainly in the UK, it's all no responsible organisation would ever put adults, whether they're paid or volunteers, in charge of young people unless they had been put through a criminal records check. I don't know how up to date you are with UK news, but there's been quite a lot of excitement in the British press over the last couple of years about some fairly serious instances of child abuse from people in positions of authority. So in the UK, it's very unlikely that anybody would be operating without that system, but different countries have slightly different systems for checking out their volunteers and their staff. So we'd want to just hear from vessels as to how they is really about having a track record. So rather than just putting bursaries on a ship that's entering the races for the first time, we don't know anything about them. We're interested in how they deliver youth development. So it isn't just about physical safety, it's about how creative they are in running youth development on board ship, which is the main point of sail training in our view. Then, as I say, we ask the vessel operators to sign this every year, and they have to tell us if anything changes during the course of the year. Now, at the moment, as I say, this is a trial year. At the moment, this applies only to STI's own bursary money, but we thought it might be something that you might be interested in as people who are paying to put trainees on vessels. It might be something just that's worth your thinking about, and you will need to adapt it for your own sort of in each country. There'll be slightly different requirements and needs. So, as I said, just to summarise, a lot of this is already a requirement for entering the race, but the additional requirements are basically to make sure that particularly disadvantaged young people get a good experience and are properly looked after. And we're inviting feedback from all of the ships this year, and we will undoubtedly review it and refine it at the end of the year, and hope to come up with a slightly better system next year. So, as I say, we're not insisting on this, but it's something you might like to consider.
Thank you, Jonathan. We have printed handouts with these 13 points on, which we can give you at the end of this session if you want to take them away with you. Fantastic. Okay, well, we're moving on now to Miriam Postuma from the Golden Louvre, who will give us an insight from a vessel operator's perspective.
Thank you, Paul. Placing trainees from a vessel's perspective. Well, first of all, I would like to say that we love trainees and we cannot get enough of them. And, well, the first night I was here with the reception, a young guy came up to me. We were together on the ship in Toulon. He went with us in the Med Regatta in 2013. And his name is Thomas. He's from the Czech Republic. And he said, Miriam, do you know that my complete life changed after that voyage? And I got goosebumps, because that's exactly what we are trying to get done. And well, sometimes it's just great to see someone have a very big growth, and sometimes it's just good to see that someone has taken a baby step, and that's why placing trainees is really important. So, what does a ship have to offer? Because there's so many of them. STI has put us in categories, of course. We've got a class A, B, C, D. And typical characteristic is, of course, size. And in our case, we are an A vessel. We can take 60 trainees, 70 meters, quite a large number of trainees, which means very dynamic environment, always something going on, group processes, not one, maybe 2 or 3 at the same time, big parties. But that may not be for everyone. You know, you can have a trainee that needs a ship with an easier overview, more maybe easygoing. So we really all recognize that every vessel has got their own pros and cons, so that you can take that into account. General SEAL training ideology. Well, as Jonathan said, there is more awareness of, okay, what are you doing on the ship? And that awareness is growing. And I think you can assume that every ship has jotted down something about their SEAL training ideology, and maybe you can ask for it. In our case, we built the ship with SEAL training in mind. We have that luxury, and so our SEAL training ideology, one of the things is that we want to have the trainees take over the ship, as much of it, as soon as possible. So from the littlest thing on, building the ship, we had that in mind. So that's one thing. And also, yeah, another idea is that we feel that we should give them the opportunity to take responsibility by giving them responsibility. Our SEAL training program is all about growth and empowering, but it's not for everyone. It really is not. If you have a trainee who wants to go on a normal holiday, and sail for about an hour, we are not the ship for you. So you can have a puzzle in that. So what else do we do? We do a lot of EU exchanges. What is an EU exchange? Well, I always call it SEAL Training Plus. It's all the benefits of a SEAL training voyage. And then you add the aspect of an EU exchange, which is a lot of internationalities, of nationalities put together with the aim that they learn from each other and want to learn from and about each other. But do you want to do that? Because SEAL training is challenging enough as it is. It takes mentors extra besides your crew, which you really have to motivate to do a real SEAL training program. You need mentors, you need time, you have investments. So think about what is it I want to I do with the ship, SEAL training wise. The Met Regatta I just mentioned with Thomas, it was, I'm going to share this story. 2 days before it started, we got the list of trainees who were coming on board. We looked at the list, like, wow, that's an interesting mix because there was a group of 15 very young Italians, 15, 16, who later on turned out not to speak a word of English. We had a few families, actually, two or three, I don't recall. Not young children, of course, they have to be 15, but they were families. And we had a group of somewhat older people in their 80s, 70s, 80s. They were like, okay, what shall we do? And that was the first time we really had to think about our program and if it would fit this group. And we talked about it, said, okay, should we change something? And we decided against it. We decided to stick to what we know. And because our program, for instance, a little example, means that all people are divided in watches. So can you divide, can you tear up these families and say, well, you're not in the same watch, because that's part of our program. And also, can you ask an 80-year-old to come out of bed at 4 o'clock in the morning? Is that okay? We did. In our case, we have a gathering table. So if the new watch comes, everyone is gathering at a gathering table, and they're going to talk about what they expect from the coming watch and divide tasks and things like that. And the new watch can only relieve the old watch if they are complete, which is a very self-regulatory system. But yeah, then it only works if everyone is there. It works. It was great, but a challenge indeed. And why am I sharing this story is because you do not have to have a perfect picture beforehand. That's not what I think the aim should be, to have the perfect picture. But for us ships, I think it's good if you really keep on thinking, okay, what do I have to offer? And so that that was that story. Okay, communication is managing expectations. Ship to port. In this case of a lot of 80-year-olds, I made a mistake we did communicate about our ship that we have a dormitory. In the dormitory, there's a female side and a male side. but there are bunks. So if someone is expecting a luxury cabin with their own toilet and things, it wasn't there. And I did not put enough emphasis on that. So I learned from that, saying, okay, the information was there, but after that, I communicated it better, saying, okay, especially if I know the group is going to be not only 15 to 25-year-olds, I communicate this better. Just an example of what could I do better. Board to trainee. Well, obviously Aalborg did a wonderful job, and I have nothing much to add to that. They did wonderful. Later on, I'll talk a little bit about practical information, just for interest. And I'll keep it short so we have time for Q&A. Ship trainee. Well, maybe port trainee. If the port is placing the trainees, we as a ship, I think, expect that the basic communication will come from the port. What I think in this case, then, the ship's role should be is reassurance. You don't have to send all of the trainees the kit list, for instance, but all the questions that are just a little bit different, just a little bit more to the ship. I don't add the language, for instance. What's the language on board? It's in our case English. If someone has a concern and say, my English is not that good, that's a perfect moment to call the ship and say, so how do you manage that? And I think actually it would be good if the trainee himself get the chance, the opportunity to contact the ship, the operator. In this case, a lot of it is reassurance. Saying, okay, this is how we deal with it. The stuff you cannot put on an A4. That's, I think, is you should be as a ship available for that, and you could expect that of a ship. Agency. We have very good experiences with agencies. We have very good experience with port placing trainees. If you, as a port, are completely new to this and you do not have a lot of resources, you don't want to invent the wheel, I would most definitely recommend an agency. For Aalborg, they are like set to do the job. They have in-house capacity. It's another story, perhaps. So for us as a ship, it is you get the same information in the same way, which of course is always very handy. And we have very good contacts with certain ports, and with others less, and then it's easier to manage. So that's the difference between both, I would say. Go on to practical. Kit list. Yeah, still a lot of people do not know what to bring. For me, it's amazing. When I talked to Paul about this this presentation, and for me everything is so normal. After a few years, you say, well, of course you bring this, of course you bring that, but it's not that obvious for many people going to see for the first or maybe for the second time. So really the basics start at zero. And so zero means you're going on a sailing ship, you might want to take a warm jacket. We actually did have people on board that didn't bring one. So we have extra gear on board, but not for 60 trainees. So in our case, also very other stuff like should you bring a sleeping bag or not? Some ships maybe not. In our case, yes. So the basics, what to bring, and I always say just be like an onion. Take a lot of layers. If it's good weather, you take them off. You have a lot of different outfits, and if you're cold, just basics. Joining procedure. It's happened to me more than once that on a change day, the one group leaves, the other one comes. I get a phone call, or 50 of them, saying, "Yes, we're here." And we're like, "But where? I got your phone number from the port." And, but where are you? Yes, we're at the airport or at the railway station. How do we get to you? And I don't know because I just arrived per ship. So I have not, probably not even been on land yet. So that complete day is then trying to get everyone, first of all, I have to get that information myself and trying to get everyone there. Joining is simple things like that is very important, because you also get a very strange start of a voyage before everyone is settled down. Everyone is already traveling and starting a new adventure, and then they don't know what's happening, where they are, and it's not a good way. So that's an important one. Frequently asked questions. Yeah, languages is a good one, because for we are so used to everyone speaking English, but it's not. And how do you deal with that? And but also for me, it's quite obvious that on our ship we don't speak Dutch. We're a Dutch vessel, but it's not obvious. People might really think that we only speak Dutch. We have a buddy system. If your English is not that great, we put buddies, and it works. So it's basically never a problem. Yeah. Experience. Should I have experience? In our case, no, none whatsoever. Other ships, like Paul said, maybe a D vessel, it might be good to be on the sea just once before you do that. Traveling alone, 15, some 15-year-olds, they look like 24, they can conquer the world. Others cannot. Yeah, stuff like that. Insurance. I realized, thinking about this subject, that I only know what I know from my ship, how it's dealt. So then I was thinking, that's a really important one. So I would like to start with questions or remarks, Q&A, because I think that's good for time as well. Yeah. So thank you.